My story of how open relationships probably won't solve your problems, only create new and often unexpected ones. I'm writing this so that someone else might learn from my mistakes. My name is Stephen. I am 28 years old, and I'd been with Joanna for almost 10 years now. We met when we were both attending college, when we were 19 years old. It was a time full of youthful enthusiasm, late nights at the library, and endless discussions about the future. Our relationship quickly grew from friendship to something deeper, and we had stayed together since then. 18 months into the relationship, we took the step to get married. It was a spontaneous decision, driven by Joanna becoming pregnant. We wanted to create a stable foundation for our upcoming child, a place where he could grow up with love and security. We have worked hard over the years to build our life together. Joanna has had a stable job in marketing, while I have worked in the IT industry. Our financial efforts have been rewarded with a house in the countryside, a quiet place where we can retreat from the city's hustle and bustle and focus on our family. The house is our joint project, each room filled with memories and dreams for the future. Despite our successes and the stability we have created, there have been times of stress and pressure. Parenthood has changed our dynamics, and we have sometimes felt exhausted by the daily demands. But we have always been able to count on each other, support each other through tough times, and celebrate the small successes together. Our relationship has always been strong, built on mutual respect and love. Joanna is a fantastic woman, intelligent, caring, and driven. She has always stood by my side, and I have done the same for her. But over the years, something began to change. Something that started to tear the seams of our seemingly solid relationship. About 18 months in, when our son was almost 1 year old, Joanna sat me down on a Friday evening in our living room. Her face was serious, and her eyes searched mine with genuine concern. "Stephen," she began cautiously, "this is hard for me to say, but I feel we need to talk about our relationship. It's never good when your better half says, 'We need to talk.'" But we sat down, and she told me that she no longer wanted to live monogamously. She wanted the freedom to date and have sex with whoever she wanted. It was a shock. Where is this coming from? I pointed out that she had never, not once, told me she wanted an open relationship. If she had, I would never have married her. She said she felt trapped and didn't want to regret anything. And I pointed out that if by regret something she meant not wanting to be pursued by an endless number of men, that's hardly freedom, more like decadence. We made promises when we got married, and these are fundamental to our relationship, and I will not agree to break them. Besides, we have a child. What example are we setting for him if we start being with others? What example will we set for him when he starts dating? She didn't want to listen to any of this at all. She just said she needed to do this with or without me. So I asked if she meant she would divorce me if she didn't get her way, and she nodded. I am a calm guy, but at that moment, I was furious. "Do as I say, or you can leave," is hardly how you treat your husband. She refused to change her mind, no matter how I tried. I asked, "Who was he?" And she looked extremely surprised and offended. She assured me that there was no one, and that this was something she had been thinking about for a long time. She hesitated a bit, but her determination was clear. I have never expressed these wishes before, and I understand that this comes as a shock, but I can't help how I feel. If you really love me, you must try to understand my position. That was what she said, and I realized we were not getting anywhere. I said I would think about it, and she had the nerve to set a deadline of 2 days. I was so angry that I couldn't continue the dialogue. So I left the house and went into the city. There, I sat at a bar and ordered a beer. Then I started thinking about what to do. I felt like I had fallen into an ambush. No word about anything like this, and then not even 2 years after the wedding. Could I really handle seeing her with others? I didn't know. How could I even imagine how it would feel? My son then risks growing up with mum and dad separated, and that's hardly optimal. What if she starts arguing about it? I might not get to see him at all. I sat for hours, sipping beer after beer. I couldn't drive home, so I went to a hotel. I had forgotten my phone in the car. During the early hours, I fell asleep and woke up to the hotel cleaner knocking on the door. I got to the car and found the phone. It had been overheating all night. Lots of missed calls and texts from my wife. She was wondering where I was and was angry when I didn't answer. So I replied that I was fine, but nothing more. I started moving home, and as soon as I stepped through the door, she asked, "Have you decided yet?" Not, "Where were you?" or "I was worried something happened," or "Good to have you home again." No, the first question was if I'd made a decision. I answered a short no and went into my study. I had a technical problem to solve at work, and staring at blueprints and equations usually clears my head. So that's what I did. That evening, I slept in my bed. Joanna treated me coldly, as if she was trying to force me to agree to this, like a taste of what would happen if I said no. But the next day, at least I'd made a decision. I left our son with my parents. He would be there Monday and Tuesday so that we had a chance to talk. But I gave in under protest, not because I really wanted to, but because I saw no other way to preserve our family. But I informed her that if she did this, I considered that we no longer had a loving relationship. We had just people taking care of a child and living in the same house. She looked beamingly happy and hugged me and tried to kiss me, but I was not in the mood at all. I had just said that our loving relationship was practically over, and she was overjoyed. I didn't understand anything at all. I stood there with my mouth open as she almost danced around the floor. I mean, what the hell? Well, it would take a few weeks before it started because she first had to find someone, and maybe I would have time to mentally prepare myself for it. One could say I was wrong at that point. On the Monday after I agreed to this, someone knocked on the door around 9 p.m. She rushed downstairs and opened it, dressed in a revealing and brand new dress. She looked stunning. I heard them talking, and then he came in. I stood there like an idiot with my mouth wide open, staring. He greeted me, but I barely registered it, and she didn't care at all. She took him upstairs to our room. I heard him say, "Are you sure your man is okay with this?" I heard her mumble, and after about 3 minutes, my hell began in earnest. I heard them clearly from every corner of the house. He pounded on her for 2 hours, and she screamed like a wild animal. I heard her moaning and begging for more. I was completely devastated. I curled up in the basement in the guest bed with a pillow over my head. I never thought about putting on music and listening through headphones. Not even within 24 hours, she must have had a man on standby even though she said she didn't. She lied straight to my face, and she has no shame in bringing him here when I'm home. She didn't care about me at all. My feelings about this were completely insignificant. Now she's up in our bed making out. I will never sleep there again. After a couple of hours, I hear the front door slam shut, and I get up. She stands downstairs with messy hair and a wrinkled dress, looking happy, tired, and satisfied. When she saw me, she exclaimed, "Well, why do you look so dissatisfied?" but in a happy and light tone. I informed her that I had probably never experienced a more humiliating treatment. How the hell did she think when she brought him here while I was home, and moreover, in our bed? Which, by the way, is now more her bed, because I never sleep there again. She laughed at me and said I shouldn't be so sensitive, and that she could make it up to me by letting me have a ride. That made me furious. I screamed at her that I would never touch her again. We no longer have a loving relationship. She seemed to take me seriously now. I am always calm, composed, and thoughtful, but now I was furious and showed it. She promised not to do it again and said she would find another solution. I went up and got my things from my room and then tidied up the basement for myself. She tried to talk to me, but I didn't respond. She even apologized. Since that night, I never slept next to her again, nor have I kissed, hugged, or lain with her since that day. The first few weeks after I moved into the basement were tough. It was as if we lived in two different worlds under the same roof. I tried to adjust to my new life situation. I established new routines with my son, and we had a lot of fun in the evenings, him and me. I tried to put him to bed every night. I tried to find others in my situation, and it turned out not to be easy. because about 99.99% of everyone would have dumped her the moment she issued the ultimatum about an open relationship. The only thing I could think of was to get tested to see if I had any disease. The probability that she was cheating before was high, so I got tested. Thank God I was clear. I made it clear to her that from now on, we would equally share all expenses such as loans, interest, water, garbage collection, and so on. All household-related costs. She was not happy. She tried to point out that we are actually married and should continue as we always have. That is, I pay most of the bills. We are married in the eyes of the law, but we have no relationship with each other. I made that clear when this started, and now this is our reality. She tried to talk to me several times about moving back upstairs and continuing our relationship as if nothing had happened, because I still don't see any of her various dates. So it's as if it were normal between us. The arguments are so stupid that the clocks stop, which I eventually pointed out, and she became furious, and we had a big fight. When I came back from work at 4 the day after our fight, I saw that she had broken her promise not to bring men home anymore. She was lying over the back of the sofa in the living room with a new guy I had never seen before. She looked at me and grinned, as if she wanted to be caught. Despite boiling inside, I calmly said, "I'm going to pick up our boy from daycare. When I get back in about 20 minutes, he should be out of this house. Otherwise, he will leave this address in an ambulance." Then I turned around and left. When I got home, he was gone, and she acted like nothing had happened. I completely ignored her and focused on spending quality time with our son. This pattern of violating our agreements repeated every time we argued. The next fight, which was about the same thing, resulted in her having set up a laptop with visible pictures of her with another man. The pictures were open and showed what they were doing. This was psychological abuse, as if she was using this to make me get back in line, to do as she said, simply. I felt extremely bad during this time. I had no one to talk to. I wanted to talk to my best friend, someone I had known since we were teenagers, but I simply didn't dare. I was too ashamed of how things had turned out. I was incredibly lonely in all of this, and I had no desire to look for a woman. Casual sex would never work for me. Even if I found someone willing, I felt too bad. Her way of humiliating me with this made me withdraw more and more from gatherings with friends and family. The only family I regularly interacted with was my son. Otherwise, I kept to myself. I couldn't be bothered to meet anyone. During the first 4 years of our relationship, I did not actively seek a new partner. As one would expect, it is not easy to find a woman under these circumstances. I felt bound by the promises we made, by our family and our home. I went on a few dates, but nothing felt right. Periods of extreme loneliness drove me to throw myself into work, resulting in promotions and a rapid career development. Joanna and I drifted far apart. We just floated around at home, and I stopped asking her about her day and how she was feeling. She didn't ask me either. Her social life also seemed to change. She didn't meet much with family either, but she started going out to bars and similar places more. In the beginning, it was Friday and Saturday every weekend. Then she went out on Sundays as well, and eventually, she went out during the week. I couldn't understand how she managed her job. After 6 years, a new colleague started at my workplace, a manager who was above me in rank. Her name was Isabel. She was a very good manager and tackled many of the problems we had. I got along very well with her. At work, she was composed, confident, organized, and highly competent. It didn't take many months before we started socializing privately. I got to see new sides of her, and it was quite exciting to see this in contrast to the orderly and composed person she was at work. She liked series, practical jokes, and breaking rules. For example, sneaking into a new movie at the cinema because the one we paid for was simply terrible. It wasn't the movie that was terrible, really. It was because the main character's beard looked ridiculous and didn't match the character. She was full of energy. It was exactly what I needed. We became very close friends. And now, for the first time, I had someone I could talk to about my situation. It helped a lot. I told her everything in detail, and she listened. She thought I should get a divorce now, Nothing would be good from staying in that situation. I began to realize that she was probably right. I tried not to let my situation be the conversation topic I always brought up, so I rarely said anything about it. She asked sometimes, and then I would respond. My deepened friendship with Isabel broke my routines at home. I was out more, happier, and began spending time on my phone with a smile on my face. Joanna became grumpier, started asking more questions about where I was and what I was doing. We had agreed that we were no longer a couple, but she still tried to control what I did. If I wasn't home or didn't say where I was going, she would get upset. I informed her that I didn't need to tell her anything. We are not a couple. We are married on paper, but that's all. I don't interfere with what she does, and she shouldn't interfere with what I do. This resulted in a fight, and then another violation of the agreement not to bring men into our house. Like the last time, she made sure I walked in while they were doing it. But this time, I didn't care at all. I just left the house and got in the car. I texted Isabel and asked if she had any plans for dinner. She didn't. So I spent the entire evening with her. Dinner, then a late movie, and then some food after the movie. It was past 2 a.m. when I got home. My feelings for Isabel deepened. Our friendship developed into something more, despite her being aware of my situation. We began spending more time together outside of work. Dinners, walks, and workout sessions. It felt natural. For the first time in over 6 years, I began to reach a point where I could feel joy. I realized that I was developing more and more feelings for her, ones that were not just friendly, but romantic. I realized that she was nearly perfect. She was even boring in the right ways. One evening, we decided to meet at her home after work. We sat and talked late into the night, and the atmosphere became more intimate. Isabel took the initiative. She started a movie, and we sat on the couch. I sat next to her but a bit apart, as we always did. She simply grabbed me and pulled me behind her on the couch so I was lying against the backrest and she was in front. Spooning. It's hard to describe the feelings. They rushed through me, and I lay down so that I was looking over her neck. I had my nose right at her neck and could smell the scent from her scalp and feel the warmth radiating from her neck. I barely dared to move for fear that she would want to get up. When the movie ended, she turned around and kissed me. I don't know how to describe my feelings in this situation. My entire love life had been dormant for over 6 years. 6 years of darkness, misery, and completely loveless. Then she kisses me, and the whole world turned upside down. Damn, how cheesy I sound now. The relationship developed quickly after that first kiss. I told her how I felt, and she said she felt the same way. I was overjoyed. After a few months of this secret relationship, I introduced my son to Isabel. It was a significant event, and Isabel quickly became an important part of my life. We became more like a couple, spent more time together, and began thinking about a future where we could be together without obstacles. There was no doubt that I wanted a divorce. In fact, I had wanted it since I met Isabel. She made me realize that the life I was living right now was not worth living. And now, with her as a steady presence, I had decided to do it. So I contacted a lawyer. Joanna noticed the change immediately. Her jealousy was real, and she began doing everything she could to destroy our relationship. She threatened to go to HR at work, tried to disrupt us as much as she could. A few times, she stood outside and screamed that I was cheating, snooped through my phone to find messages between Isabel and me, and got even angrier when she found messages where we wrote that we loved each other. Her crazy behavior got worse and worse, and it made me avoid being home. When I could, I took my son and spent days and nights at Isabel's house. It felt like we were a family. After 7 years of marriage, I filed the papers with the court and served Joanna. It was a complete nightmare. She did everything to drag it out. She forced us to go to therapy. The judge looked, to say the least, skeptical when he heard the whole story explained to him. He said, "So if I understand correctly, you, Joanna, forced your husband into an open relationship. He had multiple partners, and when he finds a new one, you want therapy?" Her stance was open and honest. She simply answered yes to that question. Nothing more. But it is mandatory here to go to therapy if one party demands it, so he approved it. But I managed to get her to pay for it herself. We were supposed to go 6 times over 6 weeks. She went with me once, then didn't show up the following 2 times, and the judge agreed to cancel and continue the negotiations. After 3 months, everything was settled. We agreed on shared custody. The house was sold, and we split everything equally. Everything was divided in half, and I was finally free. We celebrated by taking an unscheduled vacation. We spent 2 weeks in the Maldives, me, Isabel, and my son. Joanna had severe problems. I handed over my son to her at the agreed times, and Joanna looked more and more exhausted. I asked if everything was okay, and she said it was. She looked like she had aged 20 years. Her posture, skin, and demeanor were completely different. She tried several times to persuade me to come back to her, to try again, as she said. But I never responded to those attempts. I just changed the subject. She even tried to offer me a round in bed. I began to feel sorry for her. For real. After a while, it became clear that she had mental problems. My son said she had outbursts of rage, forgot things, and took a lot of medication. But he didn't know why. And eventually it happened. She lost her job and couldn't afford to support both my son and herself. So I had to take over custody. Despite this, I let Joanna see our son whenever she and he wanted. I met my ex-wife every time she picked him up or dropped him off, and I saw her getting worse and worse. 2 years after the divorce, Joanna was diagnosed with syphilis. The infection was advanced and she had difficulty seeing and heart problems. She had lost her appetite and lost a lot of weight, which led to her being hospitalized. She was completely broke and got help from her parents. But it wasn't enough, so I helped her with part of the hospital bill. I didn't want our son to grow up without a mother. It was a tough time for all of us, but this time, I didn't have to go through it alone. Now our son is 20 years old. Joanna is alive and well, but she isn't dating anyone. Everything has calmed down, and I am happily married to Isabel. When I look back, I realized that if I hadn't agreed to all of this many years ago, I probably would have met Isabel anyway. And I might have avoided the mental abuse I endured for so many years. It's a big mistake to stay in toxic relationships. If you're unlucky, you don't survive. I was lucky. Another thing I learned is that sexual freedom is not entirely without consequences. In my ex-wife's case, it could have ended with her death.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.